Have you ever wondered whether the greatest movies of the 1970s are actually the ones nobody talks about anymore? Some were too strange. Some were too intelligent. Some simply arrived before audiences were ready for them. Today we are looking at 15 forgotten 1970s films in a completely different light. You have never seen these movies like this. Number 15. The Plumber, 1979. What if the most frightening person in your home was invited inside by you? That unsettling idea drives The Plumber, a forgotten Australian thriller that transforms a routine repair job into a nightmare of psychological manipulation. The story follows a university student whose apartment becomes the territory of an eccentric plumber. At first he seems merely annoying. Soon his constant appearances and strange behavior begin disrupting every aspect of daily life. The more time he spends inside the apartment, the more uncomfortable the situation becomes. Director Peter Weir creates tension from ordinary events rather than traditional scares. A simple conversation can feel threatening. A plumbing repair can become an invasion of privacy. The film steadily builds anxiety without relying on action or spectacle. What makes The Plumber memorable is how realistic its fear feels. Most people have experienced unwanted interruptions. This movie pushes that feeling to an extreme. Decades after its release, it remains one of the smartest and most overlooked psychological thrillers of the 1970s. Number 14. Remember My Name, 1978. Few forgotten films are as mysterious as Remember My Name. The movie begins with a woman leaving prison and trying to start over. Yet from the moment she arrives in town, it becomes obvious that she has unfinished business. Geraldine Chaplin delivers a fascinating performance as a character whose intentions remain hidden for much of the story. Rather than revealing its secrets immediately, the film slowly unfolds through small actions and quiet confrontations. Every scene adds another layer of suspense. Unlike most revenge dramas of the era, this movie avoids predictable formulas. It focuses on atmosphere and character instead of constant conflict. Director Alan Rudolph gives the film an unusual style that makes familiar locations feel strangely unsettling. The result is a tense and emotional experience that rewards patient viewers. While many larger productions from the decade have faded from memory, this overlooked gem continues to surprise audiences who discover it. It deserves far more recognition than it usually receives. Number 13. Electraglide in Blue, 1973. Most motorcycle movies of the 1970s celebrated rebellion and freedom. Electraglide in Blue took a very different approach. Instead of glorifying life on the open road, it explored ambition, disappointment, and the realities of authority. Robert Blake stars as an Arizona motorcycle officer who dreams of becoming a detective. When a suspicious death enters his world, he sees a chance to prove himself. His investigation gradually reveals a much darker picture than he expected. One of the film's greatest strengths is its visual style. The vast desert landscapes create a sense of freedom, while also emphasizing loneliness. Every mile of empty highway seems to reflect the main character's growing uncertainty. Director James William Guercio combines crime drama with social commentary in a way that feels remarkably mature. The film asks difficult questions about institutions and personal identity without offering easy answers. Ignored by many viewers when it was released, Electraglide in Blue now stands as one of the most underrated American films of the decade. Number 12. The Last Wave, 1977. Long before audiences embraced mysterious psychological thrillers with supernatural elements, The Last Wave was quietly exploring territory that few filmmakers dared to touch. Directed by Peter Weir, this haunting Australian film blends courtroom drama, cultural mystery, and apocalyptic suspense into something completely unique. Richard Chamberlain plays a Sydney lawyer assigned to defend several Aboriginal men accused of a ritual killing. What appears to be an ordinary legal case quickly transforms into something far stranger. Unexplained weather events begin occurring around him. Disturbing dreams invade his sleep. Ancient secrets seem connected to a future catastrophe that nobody can fully understand. Rather than relying on obvious scares, the film creates an atmosphere of uncertainty that grows stronger with every scene. The deeper the lawyer investigates, the more he realizes that some mysteries may be beyond rational explanation. What makes The Last Wave so remarkable is its willingness to leave questions unanswered. It trusts viewers to interpret its symbolism and themes for themselves. Decades later, it remains one of the most fascinating and underappreciated supernatural films of the entire 1970s. Number 11. The Offense, 1973. Sean Connery spent years playing confident heroes, but The Offense shattered that image completely. This intense psychological drama contains one of the darkest performances of his career and remains surprisingly overlooked today. Connery stars as a veteran police detective who has spent years dealing with violent crimes and disturbing investigations. The emotional weight of that work has slowly eroded his stability. When he interrogates a suspect connected to a shocking case, years of frustration and anger finally explode to the surface. Director Sidney Lumet focuses almost entirely on character rather than action. Much of the film unfolds through conversations, interrogations, and emotional confrontations. Yet the tension never disappears. Every scene feels like a pressure cooker, moving closer to disaster. Unlike traditional crime thrillers, The Offense is less interested in solving a case than examining the psychological cost of law enforcement. It presents a deeply flawed protagonist, struggling against his own inner darkness. The result is uncomfortable, powerful, and unforgettable. Many critics now consider it one of the strongest performances Sean Connery ever delivered outside his most famous roles. Number 10. Night Moves, 1975. At first glance, Night Moves looks like a standard private detective story. In reality, it becomes one of the most intelligent and unsettling neo-noir films ever produced during the 1970s. Gene Hackman stars as Harry Mosby, a private investigator hired to locate a runaway teenage girl. The assignment appears simple enough. However, each new clue leads him deeper into a web of deception, hidden motives, and unexpected danger. The further he investigates, the less certain he becomes about what is really happening. What separates this film from countless detective movies is its atmosphere of confusion and uncertainty. Harry is intelligent and determined, yet he constantly finds himself one step behind events unfolding around him. The audience experiences that same frustration and fascination alongside him. Director Arthur Penn crafts a story where every answer creates even bigger questions. The mystery remains compelling, but the film's true strength comes from its exploration of disillusionment and moral ambiguity. Often overshadowed by more famous crime classics, Night Moves has steadily gained recognition as one of the finest hidden gems of the new Hollywood era. Number 9. The Driver, 1978. Without The Driver, many modern crime thrillers might look very different today. Released in 1978 and directed by Walter Hill, this stylish action thriller stripped the genre down to its essentials and created a cool, minimalist experience that still feels fresh decades later. Ryan O'Neal stars as a professional getaway driver known only as The Driver. He is not interested in fame, loyalty, or unnecessary conversation. His entire life revolves around one thing: being the best wheelman in the business. Opposing him is a relentless detective determined to catch him, no matter how long it takes. Their battle becomes a fascinating game of patience, intelligence, and strategy. What makes the film stand out is its remarkable simplicity. Characters rarely reveal personal details. Dialogue is limited. Instead, the movie communicates through movement, atmosphere, and expertly crafted chase sequences. Every pursuit feels realistic and dangerous, because the film avoids exaggerated action tricks. Walter Hill transforms city streets into arenas where skill matters more than brute force. The tension comes from watching professionals attempt to outsmart one another, rather than simply overpower their opponents. Although it never achieved massive popularity during its original release, The Driver became highly influential. Many later filmmakers borrowed elements from its style. Today, it stands as one of the coolest forgotten crime films of the 1970s, and a true hidden treasure for fans of intelligent thrillers. Number 8. The Long Goodbye, 1973. When audiences first encountered The Long Goodbye, many were unsure what to make of it. Instead of presenting a traditional detective hero, director Robert Altman reinvented the famous Philip Marlowe character for a completely different era. The result was one of the most unconventional crime films of the decade. Elliot Gould plays Marlowe as a man who seems permanently out of place. He wanders through 1970s Los Angeles, while holding on to values that belong to another generation. After helping a friend under mysterious circumstances, he becomes entangled in a complicated series of events involving crime, betrayal, and murder. Rather than following the structure of a standard mystery, the film often drifts through strange encounters and unpredictable situations. This approach allows viewers to experience Los Angeles through Marlowe's confused perspective. The city appears glamorous on the surface, yet increasingly cynical underneath. Gould delivers a performance filled with humor, frustration, and quiet determination. His version of Marlowe feels human and vulnerable, rather than larger than life. Over time, critics and audiences began appreciating just how daring the film really was. What once seemed unconventional is now considered visionary. The Long Goodbye remains one of the smartest neo-noir films ever made, and one of the most fascinating forgotten masterpieces of the 70s. Number 7. The Conversation, 1974. Years before discussions about surveillance became part of everyday life, The Conversation explored those fears with astonishing precision. Directed by Francis Ford Coppola, between his famous Godfather films, this psychological thriller remains one of the most relevant movies ever produced. Gene Hackman delivers a brilliant performance as Harry Call, a surveillance expert, whose job involves secretly recording private conversations. He prides himself on professionalism and emotional detachment. Everything changes when he captures a conversation that appears connected to a possible crime. As he studies the recording repeatedly, his certainty begins to disappear. The film transforms ordinary sounds into sources of suspense. A fragment of dialogue, a background noise, a slight change in interpretation. Each detail pushes Harry deeper into paranoia. The audience becomes trapped inside his uncertainty and obsession. Unlike most thrillers, the danger here is largely psychological. Harry is not battling armed criminals. He is battling doubt, guilt, and the fear that his work may have terrible consequences. Coppola creates an atmosphere so tense that even simple scenes feel unsettling. Combined with Hackman's extraordinary performance, the result is unforgettable. Though often overshadowed by larger productions from the era, The Conversation deserves recognition as one of the greatest and most haunting films of the entire 1970s. Number 6. Walkabout, 1971. Few films from the 1970s feel as visually mesmerizing and emotionally powerful as Walkabout. Directed by Nicholas Roeg, this extraordinary Australian drama takes a simple survival story and transforms it into a profound exploration of culture, isolation, and human connection. Despite receiving critical praise, it remains overlooked compared to many better-known classics from the decade. The story begins when two city children find themselves stranded in the vast Australian outback after a shocking family tragedy. Surrounded by an unforgiving landscape and lacking the skills necessary to survive, they appear doomed. Their situation changes when they encounter an Aboriginal teenager undertaking a traditional walkabout, a journey marking his passage into adulthood. What follows is far more than a survival adventure. The film becomes a fascinating examination of communication between people who speak different languages and come from entirely different worlds. Much of the emotional impact comes from moments where understanding is achieved without words. Roeg fills the screen with stunning imagery that captures both the beauty and harshness of the natural world. The outback becomes more than a setting. It feels like a living force shaping every decision and emotion. Decades later, Walkabout remains remarkably modern in its themes and presentation. It is a film that rewards patience and reflection, offering viewers an experience unlike almost anything produced during the era. For many critics, it remains one of the most underrated masterpieces of 70s cinema. Number 5. Don't Look Now, 1973. Most horror films rely on monsters, violence, or sudden shocks. Don't Look Now achieves something far more difficult. It creates fear through atmosphere, grief, and uncertainty. Directed by Nicholas Roeg, this psychological thriller has earned a reputation as one of the most unsettling films ever made, yet many casual movie fans still overlook it. Donald Sutherland and Julie Christie play a married couple struggling to recover after the tragic loss of their young daughter. Hoping for a fresh start, they travel to Venice. Instead of finding peace, they become surrounded by strange events and disturbing warnings. Mysterious sightings begin to suggest that forces beyond their understanding may be influencing their lives. The genius of the film lies in how it constantly blurs the line between reality and imagination. Viewers are never completely certain whether what they are seeing is supernatural or psychological. That uncertainty creates tension in nearly every scene. Venice itself becomes a crucial part of the story. Its narrow streets, hidden passages, and aging architecture create an atmosphere that feels both beautiful and threatening. Every corner seems capable of hiding a secret. Rather than delivering straightforward scares, Don't Look Now slowly builds dread until its unforgettable conclusion. More than 50 years later, it remains a masterclass in suspense and one of the boldest psychological thrillers of the decade. Number 4. Paper Moon, 1973. At first glance, Paper Moon appears to be a charming road movie about a small-time con artist and a clever young girl traveling through Depression-era America. Look a little closer, however, and you will discover one of the most entertaining and emotionally rich films of the entire 1970s. Ryan O'Neal plays Moses Prey, a fast-talking swindler who unexpectedly finds himself responsible for a young girl named Addie. Whether she is actually his daughter remains uncertain, but circumstances force them onto the road together. What begins as an inconvenience gradually develops into one of cinema's most memorable partnerships. The heart of the film belongs to Tatum O'Neal, whose performance is astonishingly confident and natural. Addie quickly proves she is every bit as clever as the adults around her. In many situations, she becomes the true mastermind behind the pair's money-making schemes. Director Peter Bogdanovich presents the story in beautiful black-and-white photography that perfectly captures the era. The visual style gives the film a timeless quality, while allowing the characters and relationships to remain the primary focus. Beneath its humor and charm lies a surprisingly touching story about trust, family, and belonging. Paper Moon is funny, heartfelt, and endlessly watchable. It deserves to be remembered not merely as a forgotten classic, but as one of the finest character-driven films the 70s ever produced. Number 3. The Tenant, 1976. The Tenant does something far more unsettling. It makes people question their own identity. Directed by Roman Polanski, this psychological thriller slowly transforms an ordinary apartment into one of the most disturbing locations in 70s cinema. The story follows Trelkovsky, a quiet man who rents an apartment in Paris after its previous tenant attempts to take her own life. At first, the building appears normal enough. The neighbors seem unusual but harmless. However, strange incidents begin piling up around him. Residents watch him constantly. Minor complaints become major confrontations. Everyday interactions start feeling increasingly threatening. As the pressure grows, Trelkovsky begins wondering whether he is losing his sanity or becoming the victim of something far more sinister. The film carefully blurs the line between reality and paranoia. Viewers are never completely certain whether the danger exists outside his mind or within it. What makes The Tenant so effective is its relentless atmosphere. There are no easy explanations and very few moments of relief. Every hallway, window, and conversation contributes to a growing sense of unease. Over the years, the film has developed a devoted following among fans of psychological cinema. Its themes of isolation, identity, and social pressure remain just as powerful today. Few forgotten 70s films create such lasting discomfort while remaining so endlessly fascinating.
Number 2, Sorcerer, 1977. Some films fail because they are weak. Sorcerer failed because it arrived in the wrong world. Directed by William Friedkin after the huge success of The French Connection and The Exorcist, this survival thriller should have been treated like a major cinematic event. Instead, it reached theaters in 1977, just as Star Wars was changing what audiences wanted from movies. The story follows 4 desperate men trapped in a dangerous South American village. Each man is running from a past he cannot escape. Their only chance at freedom is a job that sounds almost suicidal. They must drive trucks loaded with unstable explosives across mountains, jungle roads, rotten bridges, and rain-soaked terrain. One bump, one mistake, 1 second of panic could end everything. Roy Scheider gives one of his most intense and underrated performances, playing a man who looks exhausted before the journey even begins. Friedkin turns the road itself into a monster. The famous bridge sequence is not just suspenseful. It feels like watching human nerves being tested to the breaking point. It is not cheerful entertainment. It is pure pressure, filmed like a nightmare with an engine beneath it forever. At the time, audiences rejected its darkness, its slow build, and its brutal mood. But history has been kinder. Today, Sorcerer feels like a masterpiece buried by bad timing, impossible expectations, and the shadow of a galaxy far, far away.
Number 1. The Little Girl Who Lives Down the Lane, 1976. At a time when most thrillers relied on detectives, criminals, or supernatural threats, The Little Girl Who Lives Down the Lane introduced audiences to one of the most unusual protagonists of the decade. Beneath its quiet exterior lies a suspenseful and surprisingly intelligent story that deserves far more recognition than it receives. Jodie Foster delivers an extraordinary performance as Rin, a 13-year-old girl living alone in a large house while claiming that her father is away on business. Her independence immediately attracts attention from curious neighbors and suspicious outsiders. The more people investigate her situation, the more mysterious it becomes. Rather than presenting Rin as a helpless victim, the film portrays her as resourceful, intelligent, and determined. She constantly stays one step ahead of the adults attempting to interfere in her life. That reversal creates much of the movie's tension and originality. Director Nicholas Gessner builds suspense through character interactions rather than elaborate action scenes. Every conversation feels important, because hidden motives are always lurking beneath the surface. As secrets gradually emerge, the story becomes increasingly gripping. What truly elevates the film is Foster's remarkable performance. She carries the entire movie with confidence and maturity far beyond her years. Decades later, The Little Girl Who Lives Down the Lane remains one of the most overlooked thrillers of the 70s, and a perfect example of a forgotten masterpiece waiting to be rediscovered. Hollywood often tells us that the greatest films are the ones everyone remembers. The truth is, sometimes the most rewarding discoveries are hiding just beyond the spotlight. These forgotten 70s movies challenged conventions, explored bold ideas, and delivered unforgettable experiences. If you thought you knew 70s cinema already, these 15 remarkable films prove there is still an entire world waiting to be rediscovered.